Welcome to this week's Business Survival Kit webinar series. You're in week 8 of the Smart Restart. We're so glad that you're here. This has been a great series so far, and today is going to be no exception with wonderful guests and some great topics. So let's get started. I'm Nathan Lesnowski. I'm Concurrency's Chief Technology Officer. I've been with Concurrency for 19 years, had a lot of experiences through recessions and recoveries, and our conversations with industry experts and some of our internal concurrency experts have been really fascinating over the last several weeks. I'd like to introduce Swami Venkatesh, who is a data scientist with Concurrency. He joined us last week on the webinar for Smart Restart on week 2, and he's also going to be here today. Welcome, Swami.
Thanks, Nate. Happy to be here. I'm a data scientist here at Concurrency, and I'm looking to implement interesting AI solutions to help the Smart Restart.
Awesome. Thanks, Swami. And then we have Damon Sanchez, who is a UX architect.
Hi, Nate. I'm glad to be part of this web series here at Concurrency, and I think that the content that that's been produced during these webinars has been great for our clients and great conversation starters. Happy to be part of it.
Thanks for being back again, Damon. And we have Anthony, who also is back again to talk a little bit this week. He's a technical architect for the Concurrency.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, and I'm happy to bring some knowledge here from the Power Platform side.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. So over the last several weeks, we've been talking about Smart Restart, and we started with the idea that the Smart Restart begins with your people. If your business is anything like ours, you've now been communicating what Smart Restart looks like for your information workers, and you may have already been communicating it with your manufacturing or your workers that need to be in the field. The engagement of your people, the ability to leverage bots and Power Apps and Teams to be able to engage in meaningful communication, awareness, and protection of your people is critical in the Smart Restart. We started our Smart Restart series by talking about your people. And if you haven't watched that particular webinar, go back and check it out at week 1. Super interesting stuff. Then we moved into talking about operations. And operations was all about the ideas of how the supply chain restarts, the planning restarts, the ability to leverage artificial intelligence to be able to improve our intuitive decision making, the relationship to how we're optimizing our data center, the relationship to how we use information to be able to better the in-office experience of our employees so they can get more work done, the ideas around optimizing work processes tied to Power Apps and how we can make manual work processes that are very slow to execute faster as a component of our Smart Restart, and also coming into the idea around how security impacts this. So we talked about these kind of entry topics, and now we're moving into a conversation and how customers are impacted in the relationship to how you are restarting your business and how starting interacting with you. How the Smart Restart is a package of how your customers are needing to change the way they buy from your organization, how they have needs, and those needs have to be met in a different way. How they essentially have engaged in your organization in a new way because of an unmet need that they had, and how we can meet them where they're at with modern product, engage them with bot experiences, engage them with gap filling where we need to be able to cross a barrier where they're not willing to be able to, or not interested in being able to cross that barrier on the way back, or maybe where they found a new reality of how they want to interact with a company like ours. So how we engage in the Smart Restart with our customers is a critical aspect of how we bring ourselves back into a full business operations, and we're going to talk about some varying different topics on that today. So we'll cover 5 different scenarios, some of which we'll do in more depth. Next week's webinar will be on Smart Restart Learning. So after we have now gone through several weeks of talking about bringing about the Smart Restart, we will have companies that have now gone through it, and they'll have experiences on the back end of what that Smart Restart has looked like for them. Next week, we're going to bring a lot of this together and bring about what are companies experienced as they've gone through the Smart Restart, and what are the learnings that they want to bring to the table to be able to share with the audience here. Also read our blog on Smart Restart, covers a lot of these same topics, and hopefully gives you some additional ammo to bring this about in your business. So today, what we're going to talk about is a couple different main topics inside the context of engaging customers. The first is how we may engage our customers with different types of artificial intelligence or bots or ways to be able to meet our customer where they're at in a mixed reality or remote way that enables them to be able to get what they need from our organization faster, and for us to take advantage of the customer's desire to be more remote, to be able to accelerate the way that we serve them. We're also going to talk about ideas around gap filling with Power Apps, where the way in which I organize my teams or the way in which I'm interacting with my customers needs a quick fix. It needs something that meets the customer where they're at. Where can we start to build some of those from the business to be able to hit that customer's need immediately rather than wait for a larger project? We're going to talk a little bit about safety and safety with bots and vision and safety with Power Apps, as well as unmet needs around modern product, where my customer's looking to interact with me differently and I'm meeting them with a modern way of delivering my capabilities to them. So when you think about the idea of this opportunity, this change that's happening, I think it's a space where we can either play the game at a point of parity with our competitors, or we can look at it as an opportunity to be able to provide points of differentiation. And over the last 3 months, this void has grown even wider because what is the table stakes of the interaction is driving into this idea of delighting our customers. It's driving into these things that historically may have been points of differentiation and now are not only points of differentiation, but they are meeting the customer where they have the unmet need. Where historically just driving into this points of parity space would have kept me in business. Now, so many businesses are stuck in this points of parity. They can't meet the customers where they're at, and they need to drive up into this delighting zone. They need to drive up into this points of differentiation. So this is moving from a aspirational nice to have into a need to have because of the way that customers are intending to do business now. Customers are not returning to stores in the droves that we would expect them to. They're enjoying the fact that they can interact with us in digital means. And by using those digital means, we can drive those customer satisfaction levels up and fulfillment levels up. So we're going to start by talking with Swami about how bots might be used to optimize customer interactions, especially in scenarios that might be very complex customer interactions. So Swami, why don't you talk a little bit about that idea for us?
Sure. So to start off with, again, you're going to engage customers, and the idea here is to try and understand what the customer actually needs. That story, and particularly it's much more important now with the Smart Restart, there are new concerns that have come up, newer wants that have come up, and we need to address that particular aspect of the customer. So it's really important for us to understand what the customer wants and take it from there to take it into an ideation, validation, building a solution that actually answers that particular question. And the best way I can think of how we can understand what a person wants is to hear them speak, to hear them write, right? So text analysis, and that's where we can leverage AI, ML, which has a large number of different subfields, if you may, that we leverage in totality to answer these questions to come up with a really pragmatic solution. One of these that I like to talk about today is what we call natural language processing, right? Where we take a natural human language and then get the bot or AI to analyze that. I'll give you a quick example, if you may, like just to say how complex words can be and how important it is for bots to understand that. Let's take a word puzzle. If I say, well, if you take the idea of a king, and if I say, let's remove the man from it and add a woman to it, what do you think the answer would be? Like when we think about it, we'd say, okay, take the masculinity away from the idea of a king and put femininity, you get a queen, right? We have to get the bots to understand that level. And that's why natural language processing has its own algorithms that it has set up to understand the complexities of human language. And through that, what we achieve is something even as simple as text information retrieval. Think about a Google search. And that's really important. If somebody asks you a certain question, then you actually go ahead and retrieve the correct information from your storehouses. So that's an important aspect. NLP is in the background of all of that. Then text information extraction. If you want some keywords extracted, let's say if there was a complaint that a customer had, but what was that complaint pertaining to? If you look for those keywords from what the customer spoke or said or wrote, you want that text information extraction. That's another angle of NLP, which is really important. And most importantly, I think what we should highlight is actually the sentiment behind what the customer wants. Is that a positive sentiment, negative sentiment? And then you can analyze the response and kind of target a response, or tailor a response to that particular individual. We get more complex as NLP. We get into machine translation. We'll talk a little bit about when we can translate to different languages. That's another component of NLP. And finally, question answering. Like if a normal human were to be asked a question, how would you answer it? Can we get the bots to mimic that human emotion and get it to answer that? Yes, and that's what natural language processing in entirety kind of achieves with all of these processes. So just to give you an example, what we did in our past engagement that we included this natural language processing in either getting customers to get the quotes faster. So we used a combination of pulling out keywords that define products, identify a particular item that matches with that, and return that in a quote. So this is one of the things that we did. And the other one is also customer service acceleration. So the speed with which we can return these quotes or return what the customer actually asked for kind of adds to their satisfaction level, works back, like gives you back to your business in multiple different ways. And these are some of the ROIs that we have kind of achieved in the past by implementing these solutions for our customer. And in general, I just like to point out here that, like when you talk about through a sales interface, then the number, you also kind of make your people's lives easier in kind of speeding up the process. And that also saves you a lot of revenue annually. So these are some of the advantages that we have seen in the past, some of the solutions that we've created.
Yeah, and the idea of interspersing or engaging text analytics and bots and AI into the customer engagement process may seem aspirational, but what we're seeing is that the bold companies that know that customers are looking to engage their businesses that they're doing business with differently are seeing this as not just an opportunity, but the space where if they don't do something like this, they lose customers because they're intending to do business in a different way.
Absolutely, and that's the most important thing. It's like meeting the customer where they're at, with what they want, and that's where you get a truly transformational, as you said, a differentiation, a point where the customer is also as engaged as you are with them. So I think that's really key. And one of the other things that I just like to point out here is the way most cases where people think an AI ML approach to stuff would be a rather long engagement. But what we want to point out is in the past what we've done is we have broken down these chunks into something that's manageable, something that gives you ROI in the immediate future rather than waiting for really long times. And we've always seen that kind of a plug and add on kind of an approach to our work streams has really given our clients a lot of ROI in that sense, an additive manner. So that's another thing that I'd like to point out. But yes, based off of all of
right? Incremental in the sense that it's not like you get micro value tied to the way you would approach a problem like this.
That's right. And in general, that's the big idea. Like when we start off with something like an AI model, what I want to get at is towards the end, and what we'll be talking about in just a little bit, is how we add on and bring in more aspects to it. Like once you have the AI model ready, you can think about bots interfacing with them as well. And that's one of the things that we'll be talking about. And that's how we add incremental value to what the clients actually want.
Awesome. Thank you, Swami.
Welcome.
All right, so let's move into that was a great example of using AI as a way to be able to receive information from a customer to accelerate quote return and provide value in a way that they're looking to receive it. Anthony, let's build on that. You've been meeting with customers in low code, no code scenarios where there might be a customer need that they were doing one way, and now they have a need to meet their customer where they're at, but change the way that they're interacting with them slightly. So they're in a position to be able to do their mission of their organization, but maybe do it differently. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. Yeah, I think everything that Swami was saying really ties into, the low code, no code. And the reason why I say that is because what we've just, kind of talked through was that micro value and agile approach. And that's exactly what we do in the Power Platform. What we want to do is set the stage up for something like an MVP, very similar to what you're going to see here on the screen. This is the resource homepage. Looks like Sarah just checked in. She's checking in at a new location, and then it's showing information about that specific location. So what we're diving into here is it used to be everything that was driven through log files that was basically written on paper. It was telephone. It was like that telephone back and forth. Different things of that nature, where everything was just very manual. Here, what we're able to do is start to track things that are going on at this location. Basically, I guess to circle back here, we have a donation app that was created here. We did this for the MBAS COVID hackathon that was performed about 3 weeks ago, and it was between myself and 3 other members that we had created this app that allows people to the employee to check in, who is Sarah in this case, and then it's also the volunteers to check in, who then Sarah would enable them to check in on this app. Really, what this is doing is streamlining and then also tracking the information on how they're interacting with each other at each of these volunteer sites. You can see that Sarah had a different location here that she checked into, and based on the analytics that was tracked on the back end, now it's realizing, hey, you're at a different location. Let's dive into that. Also, it's going to show them where they should be able to find the product, where they can expect the product to be dropped off at, and then later on in this application, you're able to see, basically what products you're able to give out during that event, and then also it'll kind of basically subtract the amount of product that is out there from the overall inventory, allowing a greater management of what's in stock and what can be used at future events. So one thing that's really great about this is using the geolocation tracking. So when they check in, it's going to check in at that specific location. The other thing here is that we're going to do a little bit of sentiment involving once they check out. So there's a check-in process and a checkout process. And then very similar to what Swami was talking about earlier with machine translation, you see up there in the bottom or in the top right where it mentions English and it has a little drop down there to the right. You're going to be able to switch this between languages so that this is a nationwide app. When you're able to punch in and you're in a different area that's that's not their native language, you can switch that over to another language. That being Spanish or French, whatever would be next in line there. So really being able to do all of these things in an agile approach. And again, this is only the MVP that we did over a hackathon that was 24 hours that was built for this donation center, where they wanted to just take the first step. There's a lot of future engagements. I think that what would be really awesome with this type of app would be something of mixed reality, where we can say, hey, vendor that's dropping off our product on pallets, we'd like you to specifically drop this in this area right here. And you can send them a picture exactly of we expect it to be in this area, because a lot of times they don't know where they're supposed to drop it off, and they drop it off at the wrong location, and it takes lots of bodies to bring that that pallet of product inside or to the area that they really need it to be used. So being able to streamline some of these things and then involve other people, like the vendors that are dropping off information, the volunteers that are checking in, being able to basically interact with them through this app and be able to send out information based on that is really powerful, especially when before they were playing telephone games, lots of back and forth, just by the manual transition of talking. It's really powerful stuff. And not only that, is being able to track this information in a jointed system. If this information were spread out like it was before, there's a lot of misses and a lot of things that can happen along the way that you're not going to be able to track these types of things.
Yeah, we've all done volunteering, right, and had to check in with a person holding a clipboard, and with the need for social distancing, this kind of app that you created in less than 24 hours enables a group of people to be able to work together on community organization or a business, and do so in a way that facilitates social distancing, but also facilitates other kind of just digitally transformed ways of engaging this. Once they start checking in an app like this, then that maybe goes on Facebook and starts to spread out, understanding that this organization is doing something, and it creates that additional momentum.
Yeah, and I think just to piggyback off of that and what Swami had said earlier, I think what we see a lot in this app is the advantages of tracking that information. So what comes of that is actionable items, and that's where the Power Platform really has a sweet spot, is making what is out there and that what's already being tracked and making that actionable, and doing that through the Power Platform and doing that in an agile approach very quickly.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony.
Yep.
All right, let's move into our third scenario with Damon. Damon's going to talk about how some of the things that Swami and Anthony just mentioned around bots and artificial intelligence and meeting the customer where they're at with potentially a mobile screen is driving customer satisfaction in some scenarios that we've all been part of. So Damon, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, thanks, Nate. There were a couple things that were mentioned, that sort of ROI. Well, what is ROI in this sort of the new normal? And when we think of artificial intelligence, in some cases, it's the ROI of comfort, right? We're able to give customer satisfaction. And there's no better example of this than Starbucks. I think these next couple slides, we were able to utilize some places online, and we have the reference material below. But Starbucks, the reason this is a good example is that they closed just like a lot of other businesses. Their smart restart was to open back up their drive-through lines, and so on screen you can see everybody has potentially during this COVID crisis seen the long drive-through lines at Starbucks. What they're able to do is they've used artificial intelligence, and kind of like Anthony's example, where if someone has it on their device, they're able to get the location. They're able to not only say, hey, Brendan, welcome back, but also use that data to help out the experience. And so in this case, if you're ordering something from Starbucks, they could say, hey, you know what, the waiting time at this location is really long. Go down the street and we'll put your drink there, and then you can go pick it up. So going back to that metric example that you had shown, measuring adoption over time, they're hitting within that angle or in that sweet spot of delight and also satisfaction. So that customer satisfaction is being used and is being targeted with artificial intelligence to make it better. And what we, everybody has that coffee example, and you have the bot on the left-hand side here going through the ordering process. To Swami's point earlier, all of those things, those intricacies in the human language, it's able to pick some of these things out. It might not be able to understand what a double upside down macchiato half decaf with room and a splash of cream, it might not understand that, but it can pick out what they're ordering. And on the right hand side, you see some of the static examples of that natural language being used without the bot, but they're marrying the two together in that experience. So we're using location data, we're using who is logged in at the time, and we're sort of bringing it all together into an experience of satisfaction, targeted for satisfaction to that user experience. So in this examples, this is really, all of the weeks that we've been talking about artificial intelligence, customer experience, human-to-human connections, you're seeing all of it come together here for Starbucks, and how they're sort of combining all of those different smart restart examples that we've shown in previous weeks together. Now for bots, I think one of the things that we find with bots and our artificial intelligence is we quickly go to that communication thread. But in this case, the bot is doing the data analysis behind the scenes, and it's coming together with an experience that it has predicted to make that experience better. There's a long wait time. If this person is here and I know they're here, they're going to wait a longer time in a line. So it's using the artificial intelligence to then say, this location over here doesn't have that long of a wait time. Go over here and your experience will be better. And it sort of brings to bear all of the things that we've been talking about. Now in the next slide, what you'll see is in previous weeks, we had showed, and in week 2, we showed a bot example that we had is currently in route for our smart restart at Concurrency. And you can kind of see in the communication thread, great question. We're planning a phased back to work plan that places employees, and we're trying to make sure that we have that ROI of comfort.
Thanks, Damon. I think that the remote ordering experience of Starbucks, it kind of came out of nowhere in a sense, because I remember stopping in a Starbucks and a customer of ours that was in the base of their building and seeing all these people coming in just picking up cups of coffee after I'd ordered mine, and I'm like, I didn't see these people order. How are they getting their coffee? And knowing that there's this app that's being used to do the order. Well, at the time, that seemed a little bit like just a very basic convenience factor, maybe optimizing the way the store ran. But now it's meeting the customer where they're at by enabling social distancing, and even, as you said, driving the idea of, here's the product that you bought yesterday. Here's the coffee that you got yesterday. Would you like it again? Here's the fastest place you can get it at. I'll have it ready for you by the time you get there. Don't go to the store, it's already busy. This kind of smart engagement, providing what the customer is looking for, it went from like a percentage of our people are using this because it's kind of a nice to have and it's a differentiator, to this is what people are asking for right now.
Yeah, well, and this ties into, Swami, you had mentioned this idea of the ready-to-use algorithms, and the idea that they can be added together to make an even richer experience, right? So maybe the first algorithm is, I need to know who this is and where they are. The next one is, I need to know what they've ordered in the past, and then the next one is, I need to find out what location they're at and how backed up it is. And then I need another algorithm to find out where is the closest location that has a slower wait time. All of those ready-to-use algorithms, then targeting
they
customers.
kind of play together. Yeah, and that's the entire catch of ML. The beauty of ML is in the fact that there are these multiple algorithms that have been created for very specific things, but we can actually stitch them together, right? And most of these companies would definitely have various data streams, like you mentioned, with respect to the data regarding how populous a certain location is at that point in time, right? And we could even use what we spoke last time, Nate, about demand forecasting to kind of predict what would the demand be at a certain time in a certain location for a coffee shop, tie all that in, right? In creating a bot experience that tells the person exactly what they want to make their entire experience as seamless as possible. And these are trying times, so we want to make that part as easy for the customer as possible, and that's what all businesses want. So yeah, definitely gets all of these disparate parts put together into a neat package. So
Awesome. Damon, Swami, thank you so much. Anthony, any other closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think I hear what Swami's saying, and how this can really tie, put a bow on it, is making those things actionable. When something pops up, there's a sentiment that says they got a review and it wasn't satisfactory. It's 65% and lower, and it didn't meet the threshold. So when you see that, it pops up and it immediately goes to, like, say, the manager on site at Starbucks, something like that, where it can drive actionable results, and then in turn make that customer's experience better. It's overall really trying to make these things work together, but doing it in an actionable way.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony.
Yep.
All right. Awesome examples. Thank you all for your engagement today. And next week is going to be just as good. Next week, we're going to be talking about Smart Restart learnings, going into what companies have found in bringing their employees back into the office, in driving their operations, in engaging their customers, and if there's any nuggets that have come out of not only the last 3 weeks, but also what they've learned in the meantime. And then we also encourage you to talk with us one-on-one. We love to talk about these topics and engage with you. So if there's a scenario that we've been talking about that is relevant, a lot of these are quick implementations. These are things that you can get off the ground and make an impact within a context of a week or less. And some of these were built overnight. So you're talking about some really quick impact that has a substantial benefit to the business. And looking forward to talking with you about that. Also, remember to read our blog on Smart Restart, so you can see that perspective there, and watch the recordings from our previous weeks. What a great opportunity for us to be able to talk about some really cool topics. So thank you for coming this week. Looking forward to seeing you next week, and good luck on your Smart Restart activities.
Awesome. Thank you again, Nate.
Thanks so much.